Hey everybody, welcome back or welcome to The Growth Project, a podcast by AMPLOS. My name is Cory Shaffer, and I'm excited to share our guest interview for this episode. You will see head coach of Clemson men's basketball, Brad Brownell. Coach Brownell and I spent a little bit of time catching up on a variety of topics. I have known Coach Brownell for probably almost 10 years. His relationship with Milk goes back even further, probably closer to about 15 years or so. But Coach Brownell and I dive into a variety of different things. We're going to hit some stuff related to just leadership philosophy, what got him into coaching. We'll talk about building, creating, sustaining a culture in college basketball. We'll hit some stuff related to team dynamics. And then we'll leave us just some big picture questions related to sort of his legacy as a coach. So Coach has a lot of wisdom to share. He's been coaching for a long time. And I think there's plenty in this episode for us all to learn from. So hope you guys enjoy the conversation. Here is Coach Brad Brownell. All right, Coach Brownell, good to see you, man. Excited for the conversation here.
Good to be with you.
Hey, let's start. I'll use some basketball language here. Let's start with a layup to get into this thing. Tell me what got you into coaching. When did you know that that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, right away. Dad was a high school teacher and coach in Southern Indiana, which is basketball country, as you know. So I was around the game my whole life. I was, 4 and 5 years old at my dad's practices and dribbling a ball, and it's rolling out in the middle of practice and probably getting chastised for disrupting things, and just going with my dad, to like scouting games where he's going to watch two high schools play, and he may play them on Friday and they're playing on Tuesday, and he's scouting and I'm with my dad eating popcorn and trying to do something constructive to help him think that I'm one of his assistant coaches at 7 years old or 8 years old or whatever it was. And so, man, I just had an affinity for the game, and obviously when you're that age you want to be around your dad, and so I was doing those kinds of things, and then camps and clinics and all that kind of stuff. And when it got more serious, I was in college and played at DePaul University with a W there in Greencastle. And I was very fortunate. I played for a really good college coach, Royce Waltman. I was a point guard, so I was kind of one of those guys that, high IQ guy and knowledge of the game. And so he used to ask me what I wanted to do. I said, I want to coach. And so I was going to be his GA. And then some things changed, and one of his good friends at the University of Evansville, Jim Cruz, got an opening for a grad assistant. And so I went there and instead, and it was my hometown. I lived at home and, started my first year in coaching and as a GA, and it was great. And then I got the crazy news that like the NCAA got rid of grad assistants that spring. And so at the Division I level. And so, I'm 1 year into coaching, I lost my job. And actually my college coach at the time went to a different school, Division II school. And so I went with him to the University of Indianapolis and finished a master's degree up at University of Indianapolis. And that's kind of where my career got started, and been downhill ever since.
I got you, man. Okay. So how long have you now been in coaching?
Wow. Well, 1991-92 season was my first one. So
Okay.
over 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're approaching 35 years here.
Yeah.
So in all that time, have you always, sounds like you've always been in college basketball, is that right?
Yeah, I have. Correct.
So how do you, and this is a big, heavy question, but what do you love most about coaching college basketball specifically?
Well, I love a lot of it. Certainly I dealing with players, relationship building with players, and, helping those guys, mentor them to be ready for life after basketball. I think that's, a responsibility that you certainly feel and take, very seriously. Love of the game, right? Just continuing to learn and grow in this game, and the game certainly changes, and, coming into the office every day and doing that, I think is really important. Being a part of a team, I think that's one of the big things, right? Is just, ever since you're 5 years old, you get put on a team, and I'm 56 now and I'm still on a team. And as weird as that is, that's, somewhere to belong, something to feel like you're a part of, something to 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 lead young people, to lead your staff. The competition, I love the competition. I love trying to put together a group of guys into a puzzle and figure out how we're going to play and then try to beat somebody else. And so there's just so many things that go into it that you appreciate. I'm blessed to be a coach, certainly.
Every coach, I think, just over time develops their own kind of philosophy, sort of a leadership philosophy. I know there's coaching strategy philosophy, X's and O's. I think that'll go way over my head and probably our listeners' heads. But your sort of leadership philosophy, how would you describe that in just a sentence or two?
I think the statement that I always like about it, leaders take responsibility. I think that's one of the things that I've learned as I've been a head coach. I'm 16th year at Clemson. I was 8-year head coach at 4 years at UNC Wilmington, 4 years at Wright State. You understand leadership. Hey, you've got a vision and you got to create this vision and then you got to communicate it to your team. And maybe when you're a younger head coach, you kind of think of leadership as like you're inspiring people, right, to achieve more. And certainly you're doing all those things I just talked about. But you think about like Newt Rodney speeches and all those kinds of things at pregame. And I mean, that's so like shallow, right? Like that's just not what it is. And as you become older and grow and learn more and experience different things, you learn that dealing with the adversity and the challenges of all the situations that you face really puts you at a test as a leader. The thing that I've tried to do well is be consistent. We have a consistent culture. I think we have a consistent way we go about doing things day to day. I try to lead in a consistent way. I'm just a big believer, and it's just kind of the daily discipline and the daily drive, the daily habits is how you build, successful people and teams and programs. And throughout all of that, it's incumbent upon the guy who's leading the team to take responsibility, especially during difficult times. That's probably my favorite phrase about leadership. And I think the one that comes to mind the most, that really it's not just responsibility for like decision making, it's really you're taking responsibility also for the people that you're leading. I talk a lot about to our team that, hey, leadership doesn't discriminate. Like, you don't have to be the head coach or the captain of the team to be a good leader. Mm-hmm. Everybody has an opportunity to lead in whatever way that you feel comfortable. And it's an incumbent to have a good team and good culture at your program that other people are doing those kinds of things. But when things get tough, man, when it starts going a little sideways, when the waters get choppy, you got a lot of eyes on you. I mean, everybody is looking for answers or looking for you to help figure things out. And, especially when there's hard times and there's adversity and there's people coming at you with negativity, you better take responsibility as a leader in order to get through difficult situations.
Yeah, Coach, do you feel like your leadership and sort of coaching style has evolved over time? And if so, how? And for example, let's say 20-something-year-old Coach Brownell, how would he have handled the choppy waters, the adversity compared to what that looks like now?
I'm much more patient, right? I'm a much more patient coach. I probably spend even more time with players individually than ever before. I think I've grown in that area. I certainly lean on my assistant coaches and staff and others, sports site guys for help, because I think sometimes you need to talk to people who are out of the fray a little bit and give you some perspective. And so certainly much more open to those kinds of things and other kinds of things than feeling like as a younger guy when you've got it all figured out. Certainly have grown in a different way, coaching in a different way than I did when I was a younger coach.
And you've already mentioned a couple of things related to culture. So let's shift to culture. I know one of the cornerstone sort of beliefs, right, that you have, and you can see some of that behind you actually, about the culture that you're trying to create at Clemson, things like you see commitment and work ethic and integrity. But but that summarized with grit. So why has grit become such an important word and an important part of the Clemson basketball culture?
Yeah. It's an interesting story there. I don't even remember what year it was. I just remember there was a year after I'd been here, 4 or 5 years maybe. I had couple staff members come to me and say, "Hey, coach, like we need a little more of an identity. Like we need an identity as a program. We need something to grow on and chew on, and something to make sure that we're selling and recruiting." And they said, "Take a week or so, coach, and we're going to come back to you, and I want you to come up with something that you think describes how we do things at Clemson, what's important to you, what are we trying to do for our players." And so I, thought about it, got kind of involved in grit, right? Passion and perseverance toward a long-term goal. Angela Duckworth, her book and her TED Talk and all those things. I remember having read it one time and seen the TED Talk earlier and at some point and watched it and just was enthralled by it and thought that like the whole long-term goal kind of stuck with me, because I felt like that really pertains to college life, not just basketball, but like for a lot of young people, especially that we're coaching, they're going to be the first in their family to get a college degree or one of a few. And this 4 year journey to college to get a degree, that's a long-term goal. And there's going to be adversity in that goal. There's going to be challenging courses and tough teachers and all the things that come with that. And then you throw in the basketball and the challenging times that are going to face you. For just about every guy that I recruit, he's probably been the best player on his elementary school team at 8 years old, his middle school team at 10 years old or 11, 12 years old. And then, in high school, he probably led his team in scoring. And then you come to Clemson as a young player and you don't play very much as a young freshman or sophomore. Maybe you get hurt, you have a major injury that happens to a lot of guys at this level. And so for the first time in your life, you're going to get a real taste of adversity. And, you're going away from home to school, and there's just a lot of challenges, a lot of first time experiences. And I just felt like, hey, us selling this grit to our players, this characteristic of grit, and trying to explain it to them and understand that, you got to really believe in yourself and battle through some things. And it just, I felt like it was a good mission for us to get on as a program and get behind. And so we kind of started using it. And obviously there are all different kinds of examples then that come up with your players that you can talk about how to use grit and the importance of grit. And, again, emphasizing that it's more long term. It's not just we're going to be tough in one game or, in how we play, but it's an edge that you develop and a belief in yourself that you can overcome adversity, the growth mindset. Obviously, we kind of went to that shortly thereafter. We talked about grit and growth. And so it's something we still use with our players today.
Yeah. Talk to me about how do you communicate the standards and how do you live up to something like grit in terms of what that looks like in practice? How do you communicate those standards, hold players accountable, but not lose buy-in, right? I mean, you described it. You get guys who come in who, sure, they might have been great players, but that also means they've probably been allowed to cut corners at times. I'm sure you've come across that. So what's that like? Again, holding people and pushing them to a higher standard, a higher level, but you got to make sure they stay bought in too.
Yeah, I think that goes back to when I talked about all the individual player meetings you need to have. You need to really sit down with players and ask them, what do you want to accomplish? What's your purpose for here? And how can I help you get there? And, what is this going to look like? And let's get on the same page with certain things. And I'm a big truth teller. Integrity is one of our, core beliefs here. And that involves being honest. And that's honest discussion, direct discussion, and challenging kids about being honest in their effort, in their work, right? That's in their vision and what it is that they want to get done and where they are and how do you help them get there. And so like it's, how do we, certainly we have like team standards and being on time and all the things that everybody does. But I don't really think that, having a list of team rules and all that, everybody does all that. Having words on walls in your facility, that's all things you have. I'm just really big, and I talked about it briefly earlier, in consistency, right? Like communication and consistency and care. I mean, all of those things. Like players need to know that you care about them. The way they know that you care about them is you communicate with them and you spend time with them. You get to know them. It's challenging for me right now. I've got 10 new players. That's a lot of new guys, 6 new freshmen. I mean, it's a lot. And so the time you spend with them to talk about, things they want to know, things you need to know about them, goals and dreams, aspirations, where they are now, what are their ambitions, what are their concerns, what are their challenges. You have these conversations so that you can talk to them in a way about, you've lived this, you've seen this with other players. What is it? Here's the best way for you to get there. And I'm just a big believer in, hey, it starts with consistency of work, consistency of habits. And when that's going to get out of a line, and sometimes it's going to, that's when you have to bring them back, right? You can't look the other way with accountability, right? There's got to be some accountability to the standards. I generally think kids are okay with discipline and accountability as long as they know that you care. And so putting that time in, getting your staff to put that time in with players away from basketball, in different environments, is critical now more than ever. That's probably, what I've learned the most in the last 10 years or so, is how much more time you need to put in individually with players, to make sure that they do know that you care, so that you can coach them a little harder on the things that and give them a little discipline with things that they need to do a little bit better, and challenge them that they've got a little more in their tank than what they really believe they can. And then you start to see some progress, in a career, and then guys all of a sudden are starting to want to do more on their own, right? Then they're like rolling downhill now, man. They're so excited, and now they want extra work, and they're extra film and extra weight room and nutrition. And, there's so many things that they kind of don't realize when they first get here, that it takes all these things aligning to truly be your best. And then it also takes the growth mindset of, and the grit mindset of, when things don't go well, and they're going to not go well sometimes, that you can get through it. We hope that it all kind of goes together, but I'm just such a big believer in consistency of habits. I think that's where we kind of, our standards get established, because there are standards for daily work and commitments that you're making, not only to yourself, but you're making them to your teammates and each other. And that's kind of our culture of commitment behind me. There is, we're all committing to our journey, and our journeys are different. But while we're doing our journey, we're also committing to the group.
Yeah.
And that takes you, the whole humility thing about thinking less about yourself, right, is just trying to get everybody outside of themselves and into the team and each other. And that's when you're truly going to have great experiences. That's when you're going to get the most out of your team with your teammates.
Do you have any specific stories or examples that are coming to mind, players, teams, but where you really feel like the culture that you've built, Clemson Grit, has carried you through some adversity?
There's a couple different teams that just stick out. The 2000, I think it was 15-16 team that had to play in Greenville. I don't think people realize how hard that is.
That was my first year here. I remember going at the well.
Yeah. We were out of Little John for like 20 months. I mean, so as soon as one of the seasons ended, we're over in Jervy, and we're sharing a locker room with soccer, and, we're trying to practice over in volleyball. Volleyball team's trying to get time. We're trying to get time. Women's basketball is trying to get time. Cheerleaders are trying to get time. Rally cats are trying to get time. There's no facilities, your guys, hard for your guys to even go over there and like shoot on their own. You know what I mean? Like just come in at different times and shoot. And so there were just so many different challenges. It was stressful, right, on your team. And then you don't have your home venue, you know, you're traveling day of the game to Greenville. And, we kind of had an up and down. We had an up and down year. I remember we lost to Georgia by like 25 at Georgia right before Christmas, and I was worried that we were going to lose them. Um, I mean, we'd won some games, lost some games, but we just got hammered right before Christmas. We come back and we got a tough schedule, and I think we played Carolina at Chapel Hill and played them fairly well, but got beat and maybe won a game. And then all of a sudden, we've got like 3 games in a row: Miami, Duke, and Louisville, back to back to back, and they're all top 15 teams, top 20 teams in the country, and we beat all 3 of them. And it was like nobody, including the head coach, saw that coming. Somehow, some way, it's kind of that whole power of momentum, right? You just start playing well, guys start believing, good things start happening, and we just rallied. And it was like we kind of saved our season a little bit. We weren't the most talented team at all. It wasn't easy for us, but we battled, and I don't remember how we finished 17 or 18 wins. But that was a season that could have gone south. The guys could have caved. We could have easily come back from Christmas and won about 4 or 5 conference games and had a losing record. And I was really proud of that team for that. I thought that showed some grit, some toughness, some stick-to-itiveness, some togetherness to fight through some things, because it was just like nothing was easy. Daily practice wasn't easy. Everything was uncomfortable. And so I was really proud of that group. And then, I think maybe the other team that sticks out that just off the top of my head is kind of the 2018 team, the Sweet 16 team. That team, everything was going great. We were rolling. I mean, we were playing great basketball. We beat Florida, and down in Florida, we beat Ohio State at Ohio State. We're off to a good start in the league. I think we're 16-3. And in that game against Notre Dame, Dante Grantham, who's our senior leader, tears his ACL. It was just kind of like a shock of like, oh my God, our season like this. We thought we had them, we thought we had a chance to go to the Final Four that year. Thought we had a great team, probably my most talented team at Clemson. And he goes down, and the next game we go to Virginia and just get blasted. I mean, just 25 points, they smash us. You just don't know how it's going to go. And we kind of, we had to kind of reinvent ourselves a little bit, do a couple things, and it took us a while, and it was kind of stop start for a while. We won some games, lost some games, but we held on and went to the NCAA tournament and, beat a very good New Mexico State team in the first round, and then played one of the best games I've ever been a part of against Auburn and beat Auburn by about 35 points. And Gabe DeVoe and Marquise Reed and everybody went crazy. And all of a sudden you look up, we're playing in the Sweet 16. And to do that without Dante Grantham, our best player and kind of leader at the time, that team showed great resilience. And so our culture of belief and just how we do things and figure things out and sustain and keep growing, those were very helpful in those situations.
Yeah. So one of the other things, and you've commented on this a little bit, but just especially the current landscape of college sports, college basketball, there's constantly this blend of returning players, transfers, freshmen. You got people coming in and out. The task of really building a team more than ever is like a year by year thing.
Correct.
I know you mentioned you got 10 new players this year. What do you do to like accelerate team chemistry? I know you talked about how important it is one-on-one to get with guys and establish a relationship and that sort of thing. But at the team level, what are you doing to accelerate that bonding and gelling of the team?
Yeah, first thing I would say, it's really important who you invite into your family, right? Into your basketball family. And that's where my staff does an unbelievable job. And I think that goes back to the honest communication of expectations and, what we're about. And, we try to be probably an undersell, over deliver type, coaching staff when it comes to those things. And so getting people that you think fit, I think, is critical. And having honest communication during the recruitment about what the expectations are is critical, so that when guys get here, and we're having team conversations and individual conversations, that it's real, it's honest, it's we're not changing, we're not raising the bar or lowering the bar when you get here. I tell recruits during, one of the worst things that I could ever do as a recruiter was to tell somebody, promise them something that doesn't happen. And I think that happens a lot in this day and age, especially both financially and otherwise. And so I think that's a big part of it is how they come in, with what mindset they're coming in. Then from there, then it's up to you as a staff to try to build this cohesive group. And so you're doing things in a bunch of different ways. We like a little bit of the football model. We do some things where we break guys into positions, right? Our guards, our ones and twos, are with Coach Donlin. Our wings are generally with Coach Dixon. Our big guys are usually with Coach Bender. And so you start building some camaraderie through your position groups, because those are also the guys you're kind of competing against for playing time. And so doing things in those areas, whether sometimes those guys are doing individual things, not only meetings, but like, hey, coming over to their house, or, they go out to eat, or they go do something, certainly that kind of stuff. Then as a group, we do things, we go bowling, and we try to do some fun events together, stuff like that. We do community service projects together, to get guys to understand the responsibility of being at Clemson and to see each other in a different role. And that's been really good. Fishing with the Outdoor Dream Foundation, or, feeding the homeless, Sunday dinner with a twist, or some stuff with Clemson Community Care. It's just, I think those things are important, and then it's everything from football games and tailgates, and just trying to spend quality time, but also trying to do fun things like talking about, all right, who's everybody's NFL team, right? And let's talk about it, on Sundays after a big Sunday of football, or Monday after a big Sunday of football, and talk about different things that are just fun, and try to get guys to, release their personality a little to you and each other. But it's certainly a challenge, but I think it's one we've done pretty well with for the most part, because I think we do a good job on the front end of bringing in guys that we feel like really fit.
Yeah, I gotcha. So does that make you a Colts fan, Coach?
It makes me a Cincinnati Bengals fan.
Cincinnati
because
Bengals. Okay.
The Indianapolis Colts weren't in Indianapolis when I was a young kid.
That's all right. That's
I'm old
fair. Yeah.
enough that they were in Baltimore.
They were in Baltimore. Okay, I got
So
you.
my family's from my mom's from Cincinnati, my dad's from Dayton, so we're Reds and Bengals fans.
Okay, good to know. All right, what advice, Coach, would you give young coaches about navigating setbacks, criticism, that kind of thing?
First thing is, don't be on social media. As simple as that is, it's just so negative and toxic that's you got to stay away from all that. I think in terms of setbacks and struggle, the other thing too is you got to be honest with yourself. There's got to be tremendous self-reflection on the things you thought you did well, the things you did poorly, whether it was your preparation, whether it was your in-game decision-making, mindset of your players. How did you affect the game, leading in, and then what were your decisions within? And obviously you got to try to learn and grow from it, right? And you have to really embrace that. And believe me, it's a lot more fun, even in the off season, to go back and watch all these great wins. Man, the Duke in Kentucky court storms, to go back and watch those games and see all those great plays and the emotion and energy of it all. Man, love to watch those, can watch those for hours. But then you've got the losses that you don't like, Louisville in the conference tournament, or McNeese State. I mean, and to really try to go through those and figure out, what did we do poorly and how do we improve upon that, I think is vital. And if there's things that you then need to study to get better at it, it's strategy wise, or talking to people like you, sports people, sports site guys, to help you with, the messaging. I think that's vital. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing that's drastically changed for me is, obviously I have a long-standing relationship with Milt, and your and my relationship is growing, which is great now. I've probably used Milt for off and on, but on mostly for 12 to 14 out of my 15 years here.
Yeah, and I mean, even what you were just commenting on, you first and foremost, and your coaching staff being ones to take a step back, be honest, right? Try to learn from the good, but also the bad. That's something that we've already tried to plant the seeds with the players, right? Like, man, when they take ownership over that process, like you talked about, for yourself, like, man, that's when you're getting somewhere. So I know we only got a handful of minutes left here, so we can start to push to a close. Couple more questions here, but though, so one, when your players look back years from now, what do you hope they say they learned from you?
Wow.
And you've been doing this long enough that
Yeah.
you got some you could ask
I
of
do.
that right now, right?
Yeah. It's crazy. I got one guy that just messaged me that I coached at University of Indianapolis as an assistant. His son wants to be a GA for us, and had another guy text me who I coached at UNC Wilmington that he's going to be in the area and wants to introduce his sons to me and come see me, and haven't seen him in 20 years almost. Yeah, that's a hard question. I guess what I would say is, that hopefully in some small way that we help better equip them for life, right? That's that some of the teachings, whether it's the habits that we help build or some of the thought process, like around grit, were things that they could take that help them be successful in life, after a basketball, or certainly away from wherever I coached them, Clemson, um, and help them be better fathers and husbands and, productive members of society. And I think that's what's most important. And as you get older as a coach, there's no question that part of it, you know, is definitely much more rewarding, because now you've coached so many more people and they're doing other things in life, and you're watching these guys who have become high achievers or who have become really good fathers and husbands, and you still stay in contact. And I mean, that is unbelievably rewarding for you as a coach to know that they still reach back to you. I still have a relationship with my high school coach. My high school coach was not my father, and so my high school coach still comes to a game almost every year from Indiana. He drives out to Clemson, or he came to a couple of our tournament games there in Memphis. And my college coach, I had a relationship with him until he passed, 5 or 6 years ago, and that's meaningful to me. And I'm hopeful that I'm going to have relationships with my players for however many more moons that I have here.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. All right. Last one. What's one piece of advice? This could come from anywhere. One piece of advice that has really stuck with you, has kind of guided you throughout your career, something that you'd be willing to share to our listeners.
The simple thing is you have to be who you are, right? I think in coaching, you really need to coach to your personality and coach to what you believe in and what you know. Is as simple and as that sounds, you have to be true to yourself and your beliefs, because you're going to get rocked. Like, you're going to get rocked. You're going to struggle if you believe truly in how your style of play and how you go about your daily business, your habits, all those things. You're going to manage the rough waters much better. When you're trying to coach out of your personality, things don't get going very well, and you try to be somebody a little bit different. I think players see through all those things. I'm a huge believer in being honest in all your dealings with relationships, and certainly how you respond to your team. But you got to be honest with yourself first. That's probably what I would say.
Yeah, that's great, Coach. All right, hey, let's wrap up on this. What do you want our listeners to hear about the 2025-2026 Clemson Tigers?
Yeah, be patient. We're still trying to get to know each other. We just took the name tags off here this week, and so we've had balls flying all through Little John a little bit. But I think we're going to be exciting. I think we're going to be fun to watch. I think we're going to play a lot of guys. I think we're going to, I think the strength of our team is the team. I think it's our depth. We have some older players that we've brought in from the transfer portal, certainly. And we've got a couple of guys in Dylan Hunter and RJ Godfrey who fans will know. But we also have a whole host we got 6 freshmen. And I think they're talented guys. I really think they're a talented class. Ace Buckner and Dallas Thomas were red shirts, and then we have 4 other new guys that we brought in, and I think those guys are going to play. Some of those guys are going to play, and we're going to play 10, 11 guys at times, maybe even 12. You never know. We're going to try to play with some good pace, and I think we're going to pick up full court, and we'll be a little bit like the team that I coached, I think, at Clemson in 2021. Amir Sims, Clyde Trapp, their senior year team, which was COVID, so a lot of folks didn't get to see us live that year. But we played very similarly. I think we had 11 guys average double-figure minutes, and we just kind of subbed them in and out and tried to wear teams down and beat people with our depth. And I think that's kind of where we are with this year's team. So I'm excited about it. It's kind of a new challenge, new group. How we talk about here, it's same circus, new set of clowns. So now we got to figure it out. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, Coach, appreciate you. Thanks for the time, man. This was great. And looking forward to watching the team this year.
Go Tigers.